This is Unique Smiles, the Facial Paralysis Podcast, and I'm your host, Brian April. Today, we are joined by Emily Schmitz. She is the admin and creator of the Facial Nerve Paralysis Support Network on Facebook, and we're very happy to have her here. Emily, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thank you for asking.
Good. Can you give a little bit of background about you? I know you got facial paralysis in, I believe, middle school.
Yeah, so I got mine back around 2006 when I was just entering 7th grade. I think I was about 13 or 14 years old. And it really started just because I have Bell's palsy, so I have like the most mysterious origins of facial paralysis where they don't really know what caused it. It's just one day I didn't quite feel super well. I didn't feel like going into school and dealing with it. So I was like, I'm just going to take a sick day. Nothing's going on. And by about midday, I'm just watching TV, and I can't remember what prompted me to do it, but I tried to make like a funny face. And I realized that I couldn't quite like pucker my lips together. So I immediately go and I grab my mom, and I'm like, this seems really weird. I don't know what happened. And my mom's an old x-ray tech, so she immediately went to, this child has had a stroke, we need to go to the hospital.
Okay.
But wow. She didn't want to take me there immediately, so we had to wait until Dad came home at least.
Oh, wow, okay. And if you do have a stroke, you should get medical attention pretty much immediately.
Yeah.
So how long before they diagnosed it? Was it pretty straightforward?
Well, we went into the x-ray, or not the x-ray, we went to the emergency room, and they looked me up and down and all over, and I think it was one of the nurses that's just like, oh, it's probably Bell's palsy. It's a little weird that she's got it this young, but it's probably just facial paralysis, and it'll go away in a couple weeks.
So they told you that, the 2 weeks or whatever?
Yeah, exactly. They told me 2 weeks, and when those 2 weeks came and went, I was very distraught, to say the least.
Yeah, I think that's the worst part about it is some people recover fully, but they told me that for mine as well, and then once that date, like you said, comes and goes, you're just like, all right, well, now what? And you just start freaking out.
Exactly.
Why am I not healing? This is crazy. So what did you do? Did you get any recovery at all? How much did you get back, if at all?
When that 2 weeks came and went, that sort of prompted my mother to start immediately going down the rabbit hole, trying to figure out what was wrong, why didn't I recover? Because every doctor we went to, I went to a lot of doctors, and every doctor we went to went, well, she's relatively young, she should be fine by now, I don't understand what's wrong. And that kind of really drove my mother insane for a bit. It only ended up being, I think it was either a year or two after the initial onset that my mother found the Massachusetts Eye and Ear Infirmary.
Okay.
And she took me in there, and I think it was Dr. Hadlot that initially told me, it's like, well, your nerve probably got cut somehow. Either you got something and inflamed it, or you maybe got smacked in the face, and you don't remember it because it didn't do much damage to you, but it hurt your nerve. And they just got cut in half.
Wow.
So, the next thing she told me was we just have to wait for that nerve to grow back, and then we'll prep for treating Kinesis, which is eventually what happened.
Okay, so you did get Kinesis?
Yeah, oh, yeah, that's my main thing I struggle with still.
What areas of that do you currently have?
It's kind of, well, when you learn about Kinesis, it's basically just that your nerves get remapped wrong. So for me, I pretty much got kind of swapped where if I go to smile, my eye would reflexively close, or if I went to, blink, my mouth twitches. It's pretty much just backwards for a little bit there. And again, if I start eating, my eye waters or something like that, like chewing causes my eye to water. Like your standard out of the box Kinesis.
Yeah, so you get the crocodile tears and all that good stuff.
Exactly.
Does your neck pull at all? Your platysmus muscle or anything like that, or?
That really only flares up if I'm doing like some really intense facial contortions. Like if I'm yelling a lot, like for my job, I have to speak out over a crowd a bunch. If I'm elevating my voice, or if I'm having a sad day and I start crying, I feel it down there, but not usually throughout the rest of my day.
Okay, that's cool. Yeah, Kinesis is really it's really weird. It's a nice little parting gift, so to
It's a
speak.
very strange experience to deal with, and especially when you start going back into physical therapy,
Hmm.
like to try and teach yourself, because they basically plop a mirror in front of you, which is like the worst thing you want to see at that point. They say just look at your face and try and close your eye or try and smile, and that's literally it's just a mind over matter kind of thing at that point.
Do you do Botox for it at all or anything like that?
I do. I get Botox every 3 months for my synkinesis.
Okay, and you found that really helps, or
It really does, mostly for my mouth area. I used to get it up by my eye, but eventually that it did became more of a cost than a reward. So we've just moved down just to the mouth because I have a lot of like dimpling around my chin with all the smaller nerves fighting each other.
gotcha. Yep, I got that too. All of a sudden, I have a cleft chin. I'm like, I've never had one.
Exactly.
For me, like the synkinesis for my eye, like I learned ways around it. So like when I eat and I chew, I just chew with my eyes closed.
Oh, weird.
And then
Huh.
nobody, I'll just do it. I close both of them, and then nobody really notices. They're like, "Wow, he must really like food." But like I'm really
That was
savoring it. But
that
then
was always my joke too. It's such a great dish.
nice. And then I do that as well when I'm drinking. I just close both eyes, and nobody would really notice. So that was one of the things for me. So just going back, so you were in middle school and you developed this. How did that affect you in middle school where kids are notoriously just vicious?
Well, I think I can't remember how long it was because obviously I don't remember much of that year because it was a lot going on at once. But really ended up missing a lot of school immediately after the first onset because I just didn't want to go in, obviously.
Right.
I mean, like half your face, because that was when I had no movement. The nerve had been severed, so I just looked like a stroke victim for a little bit. It wasn't until I started to see, I guess, a little bit of motion back that I think I was let back into school. And my mom had written a note to the school going, "This is what's happened. Please be forgiving of her." And everyone kind of understood, except my math teacher, but that's a whole nother story.
Okay.
But,
And
but
how long? I'm sorry. How long before you get some movement back?
I can't quite remember. I just remember it first came back in the mouth. That was obviously where the most nerves go down to. And I think you stress it enough because you have to start trying to talk again and you chew with your mouth and all that stuff, but I don't remember exactly when I started seeing it. I remember it was much past the 2 weeks they quoted, but I don't remember if it was by the fourth week or maybe a couple into the second month. I can't quite remember.
Okay. You said your mom kind of like helped you out with a note to the school. Were they really helpful, or like were there any steps that they took? Did they talk to the class before you come back that you know of, or anything like that? Or
I don't think at least if they mentioned it to the class, I don't think they told me about it, but
okay,
they basically just, if I needed to step outside or, like if I got picked on, I was supposed to come and tell them about it. But really, it was just let's just be reactionary to it. Like if it became an issue in the class, that's when they would do something about it.
okay. And did you find that you had much of being picked on or bullied or anything like that?
I wasn't well, I did get picked on, but it wasn't so much the active being picked on as much as just being the outcast. I didn't have a whole lot of friends anymore. One of my friends actually wrote me a really nasty note saying she couldn't be my friend anymore because of the paralysis. But
Wow.
yeah, she kind of wasn't a good friend to start out with, so it wasn't that much of a loss, but at the time it was, yeah, really traumatic.
Right. You're
But
feeling
other than
vulnerable at that
oh,
point, and then someone who's supposed to be supporting you is
exactly.
just like, nope, see you.
Exactly. I had one good friend that stood by me through it, but other than that, people just kind of didn't talk to me. I mean, like maybe they were whispering behind my back. I'm not quite sure, but I just kind of went through middle school by myself.
Okay. Is there anything, I know one of the listeners has a son who's going through it, got it when he was 10 and is 16, so he's probably more in high school at this point. But do
hmm
you have any advice or any suggestions to maybe parents who might be listening that have a child that's in school and going through this?
To the parents, I would really just say, I mean, that do all you can to be supportive in the background. Like, I really do appreciate that my mom didn't make this sort of seem of the end of the world. Like I know her inclination was to write me special notes, and if anyone ever gave me trouble, to just whisk me away out of the environment. But it really, I mean, being a special case felt like it did more harm at least in the middle school area where you're being treated differently. It's something unique. It's, oh, her face is messed up, look at how special and unique she is, and that sort of paints a target on your back at that time. I mean, offer help when it's needed, but don't make it the topic of every conversation after school.
Right. Just kind of try to get back into a normal life, normal routine type of thing.
Yeah, just let them go at their own speed, especially if it's like me where it becomes an issue suddenly. That it's like an episode in your previous episode that you talked about a lot about, it's you need time to just mourn the loss of your face, especially when it's a sudden removal. Just understand that they're not only were they already upset with just how they are. I mean, every teen kind of hates themselves at that point, but they've gone through the loss of what identity they thought they had in their face.
Right, and that's at a time when you're still trying to really find your identity, your
Exactly.
true identity, like who am I? And then all of a sudden, this thing happens. Now you went up and you went to Mass Eye and Ear and you did all of that sort of stuff. At what point what was it like to just be around people who had it? Find other people that had facial paralysis or, knew your struggle. What was that like for you?
Well, that very first, and this is where the Facial Nerve Paralysis Support Network gets its origins from, is actually from the Massachusetts Eye and Ear Infirmary, where several of the patients, we'd bump into each other in the waiting room and we'd share stories then. And that was nice, getting to talk to someone who shared your experience. And initially, I believe it was four ladies and myself started to talk about, well, let's hold a designated support group where we all just sit down and just talk to our heart's content. We don't need to worry about appointments or life around it. We just have time to sit down and talk to each other. So we ended up arranging the very first meeting, which we had a massive turnout. Like people who were just in the area for appointments that didn't even live in the Massachusetts area went to this thing. They scheduled their next appointment around it. And this little tiny lobby in the Massachusetts Eye and Ear Infirmary is just packed to the brim with people who have a facial paralysis from all walks of life. Some were born with it, some just had it. Like myself, I had just recently had it within the past year or two. Some had it their whole life. Some had it from a really traumatic incident, like they'd been in a car wreck or something like that. And we're all just talking and sharing stories. And that was really, for me, when I started to really accept and be okay with my facial paralysis, was getting to see people past middle school. Like these people are adults. They've lived with this their entire life, some of them, and they're fine. They're happy. They're laughing right now. And it really showed that it wasn't the end of the world to me.
I think that's the important thing too, is it's not the end of the world and there is life after it. And, being around all of these people that had it and have other tips and suggestions, and you hear different stories, and it's a nice cathartic way to just go, okay, somebody truly understands what I'm going through, and they're managing okay, so I can eventually get on with my life and do some good things with that. So how did that kind of evolve from just being at Mass Eye and Ear to going onto Facebook?
Well, it initially started out as one of the ladies in the group started up the Facebook group just so we could know when the next meeting would be, because we've had, not everyone shared phone numbers, and we had some people that were they lived not very far away. So I think someone lived in Pennsylvania, and they wanted to be able to plan ahead when the next meeting was going to be. So we just started this little tiny group, and it was like, we're just going to put on the calendar when the next meeting is, and you can go online and check Facebook, because this is when Facebook's groups were in its infancy. You didn't have any options as far as moderation ability went. And we ended up getting people from California, like, hey, I can't make it to Mass Eye and Ear for my appointment window doesn't line up. Can I just log on and vent my feelings on this group? And then I eventually moved away to Atlanta, and I was like, well, hey, I need to use this group because I can't go up to Massachusetts any time anymore as well. So we ended up welcoming anybody essentially who needed to vent or talk or just see that others were like it, even if they couldn't make it to Massachusetts Eye and Ear. And we just kept growing, and now we're at about 800 members right now, and I keep adding more every day.
Just think about that somebody is willing to travel from Pennsylvania or California to go to Massachusetts to find a group or therapy or some outlet. Like, it just shows, one, how powerful that is, but two, how little globally that there is out there for people with facial paralysis. It's
Yeah.
I know there are people that I've talked to that are in like New Zealand, and they're like, I'm gonna fly out to LA to go see Dr. Aziz a day, or whatever, and you're just like, wow, that's amazing. Like, I have a friend in China, and she's like, there's nobody here. I need to fly to like the United States or England or somewhere to like get treatment, and it
Yeah.
just, it's crazy that even still, like in 2018, there's so little known about it, or locations and things like that. There's a lot of people that really just don't know that much about it. So I'm glad that we're all trying to make a difference, and you're trying to make a difference with that as well through Facebook.
I am actually really, really blessed with this group, and I'm just going to start raining praise on all of them, and they hear it all the time. But I am really the sole active moderator for that group, and the only reason I can be is because everyone in that group is just so welcoming. They understand that it's both a high and a low group. You share your happiness, your sorrows, and I haven't had to do hardly any like hard active moderation work. Like, I've done other moderation jobs where you have to ban people daily and make sure you're deleting comments that are mean spirited, but I haven't had hardly any problem with that group. Like, people are really nice. I mean, occasionally members will come to me and express that they're having issues with another member, but that's all stuff I just pull them both aside and go, hey guys, make sure these posts stay on topic and you're being nice to each other. And everyone's okay. Sure, I understand. Everyone's from different walks of life. Maybe I don't like what they post on their Facebook, but that's not what they're bringing to the support network. It's been so easy, and I love all of them that they can just, we're just here for support, and they really understand that. And I haven't had to do any sort of hardcore moderation or have any sort of really big difficulties with that job. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to do it alone.
I mean, that's great, and that everyone's really supportive. It's hard to find that on the internet, which
It really is.
actually, that's an interesting topic to kind of lead into. You are going to be married fairly soon, I believe.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yay, congratulations on that. And so let's talk a little bit about being single with, like facial paralysis and dating. I know you said you didn't do a lot of dating in high school. We talked earlier. You said you didn't do too much dating in high school, but how did you go about finding love, or, your fiance? Because a lot of people think, oh, I'm going to be, single for the rest of my life, or no one's ever going to love me, or whatever. Tell us a little bit about that story.
Well, Nathan and I, that's my fiance's name is Nathan. We kind of fell into our relationship a little bit sideways, but we initially met on just randomly and won a match of Halo 3, back in the Xbox 360 days. I was playing a game, he was playing a game. We just got randomly matched together. We chatted with each other over the voice chat, and both liked how each other played, and we liked each other's sense of humor. So we became friends after that. So I didn't really get to see him, and he didn't really get to see me until we'd been friends for about like a year or so, and we were kind of comfortable. Like, I'm pretty sure you're not a murderer at this point.
So then it was just kind of like, hey, let's see how this goes. Interested in maybe going to the next level, maybe dating, that sort of thing.
Yeah, we were really hesitant to try and do long distance because neither of us had done anything like that before. But we were both, kind of like, oh, I kind of like you. I kind of like you too. It was both established that we were really good friends, and we liked each other enough to take it to the next level. Because I've never been a person where I necessarily like dating, and I don't know if that's because of the paralysis or just me as a personal trait, but I cannot just stand going on dates.
Right. So what was that like the first time that you maybe showed him what your face looked like? What were you telling him about that? Were you nervous about that? Like, how did that all what were your thoughts on that?
I can't really remember when it came up because for me personally, I don't like to bring up my facial paralysis until I'm either comfortable with the person or it just comes up naturally. Like maybe I start eating something in front of them and I start crying. It's like, oh no, hold on, I'm not an emotional wreck. I promise. It's just something else. But I again probably didn't bring it up with him until maybe we had met in person for the first time. We met at the Boston Comic Con. We had arranged to go together.
Mm-hmm.
And I probably mentioned it to him just because I'm always a little self-conscious about how my mouth moves when I'm talking. But I'm pretty sure his response, if I remember correctly, is just, okay, cool. He obviously wasn't very bothered by it, but he was also, coming from a nerd background, he kind of was, he had his own self-esteem issues, and clearly it didn't bother me that much, so he's not going to make a big deal out of it either.
Well, that's great. Well, and I think too, you get to really know each other first on the inside as opposed to what you look like. So I think that's kind of a cool thing. Have you changed your or what is your approach to dealing with like social media and pictures and stuff like that? Because you're fairly young. Everything is Snapchat and Instagram and all that sort of thing. And how have you dealt with that kind of growing up in this whole new media age with pictures everywhere?
Well, I'm not a big Snapchat person to begin with, and I don't know if that's because of my paralysis, if that's just I don't take pictures of it, or if that's just me in general, but I am not a big selfie person to begin with. But I do, like any teenager, you do get to rehearse your best angles and take the pictures on that. It's only difficult when you start doing the group shots where I have to sort of subtly arrange myself so that I have my good side towards the camera. And I don't know if it's kind of counterintuitive because when I'm in person with people, I try and make it so that people are towards my right because that's the working side. Mm-hmm. And that makes they can see how I'm emoting better because if people are on my left, I get a lot of the comments of, oh, what's that face for? It's like, it's not a face. It's just the bad side. Get on the right.
Right.
But then when we go to take a picture, I then have to try and shuffle myself around to their left side so then I can, as they do the selfie pose and hold the camera up, I have my right side facing the camera then. So it's a little bit of a dance.
Do you have when that happens with me, because I do stand-up comedy, I take a lot of pictures, I just go, oh wait, I gotta get on my good side,
Yeah.
And I just say it right out, and people kind of laugh or whatever. And if anyone, says anything, I'm like, no, I actually have a good side. And then
That's usually what I do too.
Okay. So I was just curious with that. And then, so you still don't mind taking pictures with people and things like that? You just kind of work your pose?
Yeah, I've rehearsed my picture smile enough that I'm fairly confident about it at this point. Like I know back when I was first really, in the physical therapy process and training that, it took quite a bit to get that reflexive feeling because once you have Kinesis, your face doesn't quite feel the same as it did before. Mm-hmm. Like what felt like a natural smile back in the day is now coming off as a grimace.
Right.
So you have to, I found for me, I had to feel like I was not really smiling, like I was way toning down what my natural smile had been before. So that I'm like, well, I'm not going to look like I'm smiling in this picture, but then I turn the camera around. It's like, oh no, that's okay. That's okay. Like you just have to, it's a muscle memory that you just kind of have to work at a little bit more. And I'm sure if you talk to any like social media gurus, they talk about, oh, you just have to work at their smile. They've practiced their smile a bunch because that's just the nature of their job. And you kind of have to do it too with facial paralysis, essentially because you're just relearning what you need to be doing from a standstill.
Someone that I know that I meet that's at the support meetings that I go to has a great thing for that. She'll say she'll do a group picture and everyone's like, okay, everybody smile. And then she says, okay, now I want one where nobody's smiling.
Oh, that's kind of a nice even the playing field kind of thing.
Yeah, to make him like a serious face so that everyone looks, the same
more business
for her
casual.
Picture.
Yeah,
exactly. So if anyone's listening, that helps too. And I do that when I have to do large pictures. So are you nervous at all about with wedding photos? Have you talked to your photographer about that or anything like that? Or
well, that was really when we first started planning this wedding, I turned to my fiance and I'm like, you can do whatever you want with the music, with the guest list, with the cake. I just really want to put money and effort into finding a good photographer that'll know what he or she is doing with posing me, because these are photos I'm going to look at for the rest of my life. I'm going to want to look back on and not just see facial paralysis. I want to see the wedding day. And when I initially did my research, I just first looked for photos that I just liked the style of. I've got an art degree, so I kind of know what I'm looking for as far as color theory and framing. So I was just looking around for that. And then when I found one that I liked, I asked for her, to meet in person, which is just standard fare for photography. You meet with the photographer and talk a little bit. And after we kind of got to know each other and discussed a little bit about business, I was like, so my most important thing I have to ask you is, do you know what facial paralysis is? And have you done any work with anybody who's had it before? And my photographer, I'm just going to go ahead and name drop, her name's Livy. She immediately was like, I have done portraits of people with facial paralysis. And she just goes into her computer and just kind of whips out this portfolio of all these portraits she's done of people with facial paralysis. So I just incredibly lucked out finding her, but I want to say this as encouragement to others. If you're a photographer, this is not such a rare disease that you will have never encountered anybody with it before. So just ask your photographer, have you worked with anybody? Or even if it's not facial paralysis, people talk about having a good side. Like they don't want to, maybe they've got a scar on their shoulder they don't want to be seen in their wedding photography. Just ask them how they've posed people like that have just requests to not have a certain side photographed, and just ask them to show you pictures and how they've posed these people strategically to not have what they don't want photographed in the photograph.
Yeah,
you'll be pleasantly surprised.
Really,
yeah.
That's really good advice, actually, for that. That's really good. Thank you for that. So how are things now for you? What's life like now? You said earlier that you speak to groups for your job. You're totally comfortable with that? Do you have any issues with that? Are there any things that you do to accommodate for that?
Well, right now I work as a keyhold for an escape the room company. And if people are unfamiliar with that, basically it's an entertainment thing where it's like a movie theater. You go, you buy a seat in a room, and you have to solve a whole bunch of brain teaser puzzles to get out of that room within a time limit. For me, my job there is mostly giving you guys the rules before you go in. So I'm up there in front of groups of maximum 20 people, and I have to make sure everyone's understanding the safety rules so we don't have a bunch of people getting hurt in our room. And you try and make it funny, you try and make it lively so people pay attention to you. And the only time I really ever notice having issues with that with facial paralysis is if I have someone who just has a negative disposition to begin with, and they're looking for something. I had one lady give sort of find my boss and tell him that I was sneering at her and her kid the entire time. The other times I notice it becomes a problem is when I start to get really, really tired. You start losing kind of the finesse that you normally would. And I start spitting on people, and I have to apologize profusely.
Yeah, I've done that from the stage a few times. It's always fun. So I just tell them they're in the SeaWorld splash zone and they should put their ponchos on now.
Exactly.
Well, it's always interesting when people see that and they go, "Oh, why you're so angry?" I'm not angry. This is what I look like. So that's why I always just bring it up when I'm on stage. So, do you have any advice for people who are just starting out on their facial paralysis journey?
If they're just starting out on their journey, that means they've just recently come to a loss with what their expressions they used to have. And I would just like to encourage people to just take some time to get, acquainted with yourself. I know looking in the mirror is hard for that bit. And if it is too hard at that point, just give yourself some time. You are just getting used to the new you. And maybe, if you're listening to this like within that 2 weeks period, just don't freak out just yet. You may get full recovery. I see a lot of people in my support group that come on like they just got it this morning and they went and looked up facial paralysis and found my group, so they're like really panicking. And I just have to take them aside and go, there is a good chance you're going to recover. And even if you're one of the cases that you do have nerve damage or you've got an outstanding condition like, Mobius or Ramsay Hunt, like just take it step at a time. You will see something if you work at it. You just sit down, do the physical therapy, even if it's really, really hard, do it for an hour, and you will eventually get to a point where you like yourself. It does get better eventually.
That's good advice. Oh, so there was a question from a listener. They wanted to know, how did your facial paralysis change your use of social media, especially filters, if you use that?
Well, for me, filters really end up being just color correction, which if that's what you need, if your facial paralysis causes you a lot of like blotchiness on your side of face, like I know if I don't have any foundation on to start off, I get really blotchy if I'm really overworking those muscles. The filters will really help with color correction, but they don't do a whole lot unless you're talking like Snapchat that like sort of warps your face a little bit. That's totally different, but I'm not very well versed in Snapchat that much.
I just usually just go with the cat ears and the whiskers for myself.
Exactly.
So that's my thing.
But unless the filter is doing stuff to change your face, it's really all about the angles you need to take at. Like learn that 3/4 turn where you get just a little bit of that good side of your face, or a little bit of the bad side, but it's mostly the good side of the face. Just learn what angles work well for you, for your nose, for your chin, and just, I mean, even if you have to hold the camera like way up high for that high angle shot, like just take a bunch of pictures and learn what looks good for you. And that's what my photographer gave me advice to. She's like, we're going to sit down later and I want to show me a bunch of pictures you hate, pictures you love, pictures that are kind of meh. She wants to see just the range she can get away with for my photos.
Very cool. This is an interesting question. Were there any upsides or unexpected benefits that you got from getting facial paralysis?
I talk about this a lot, and this was really back when I had a lot of, I had a lot of kinesis, and I wasn't really retrained in my my physical therapy. When it was more noticeable that I had a paralysis, I would first meet somebody, and there would be a split second of registering on their face that something wasn't quite right, but they couldn't quite put their finger on it. And in that split second, there would be either a recognition of, oh, something's wrong, and it would be, oh, poor baby, or it would be,
Right.
what is wrong, and that told me a lot about who that person was going to be in that split unguarded second where they first met me. I'd see that, and I knew they were very superficial people. They cared a lot about their personal appearance and who they were seen with. And if it was the, oh, poor baby, they were very empathetic, and they might have gotten, especially if it was from an adult when I was in middle school, they'd be very, oh, well, it's okay. Let's give you special treatment. Let's sequester you from the others. They wanted to help, but in way too much of a way. And if you just got no reaction, they were just cool.
Nice. Nice.
They're like, okay, cool.
It just kind of brings out their personality pretty quickly.
And there's that split unguarded second after hello, basically.
We're just about to wrap it up. Again, a little plug for your Facial Nerve Paralysis Support Network, and that's on Facebook.com. Any last things you want to say, or anything we didn't touch on that you want to just say to people who are listening, or?
Just that remember we're all in this together. I know you don't see a lot of people that look like us wandering around the street, but every once in a while you'll just pass somebody who has it too. And we're all out there, and whether you have to go looking for us or you just bump into somebody on the streets, you're not alone.
I agree. Absolutely. You're not alone. There's so many more than people realize. Well, Emily, thank you so much for taking your time out of today to come and talk with us today and share your advice and wisdom. We appreciate it. And I want to wish you the best in your wedding, and have a great time. And it's going to be a magical day. And I hope we get to talk again soon. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much, Brian.